Thank you for being here with us today. We're talking about pond management and the how-tos and the what with owls about how to go about doing this. And we've got with us Larry Bull, who is the Fisheries Bureau Assistant Director, and we're talking about getting started. So I guess, second of all, do you have to have a permit to build a pond? How does that work?
You do. You need to contact the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, their Land and Water Resources Division, and you apply for a permit. And then, in certain cases, if the dam meets certain criteria and the pond is a certain size, you may actually fall under their dam regulation program. So, this isn't. A lot of it has to do with safety issues and that kind of thing, because if you think about it, you hear about some dam failures occasionally, but you do need to contact DEQ about getting a permit before you construct a pond.
No matter what size, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Where is it best? Is there a better particular location on a person's property for a pond?
Well, there's quite a few things you want to consider when you're trying to site your pond. I advise that you don't put your pond out by the road. In other words, it may invite trespassers. So if you've got a large enough piece of property that you can kind of get it hidden away from other people, that's a good thing to do. You want to consider the soil type that you have on your property. You need to have some clay in the soil so that the pond will hold water. At minimum, about 20% of the soil needs to be of a clay consistency so that the pond will hold water. You want to consider the topography, the lay of the land. Typically, you want to build in a valley, and this kind of stuff can influence the construction cost, how much dirt you have to move and to construct a dam and that type of thing. You also want to consider what buildings may be on your property. You don't want to, or maybe what future buildings you may put on your property. So maybe you've got a piece of property, you want to build a pond, and maybe in the future you may build a house. Well, you sure don't want to put your pond in the area, and then I want my house that may be in the emergency spillway area. So you need to consider those kinds of things. And also what's in the watershed. If you have a barn on your property, that may contribute nutrients. If you have a lot of cattle or that kind of thing that are confined to a barn at certain times of the year. So those are the kinds of things you want to consider.
And there's people that'll help you to get your pond designed. They'll help you design a pond and where to do it, things like that, right?
That's correct. The Natural Resources Conservation Service with the U.S. Department of Agriculture will help you do this. They formerly known as the Soil Conservation Service, but now it's Natural Resources Conservation Service. And they have folks that can come out and help you lay your pond out on your property and help you decide where a good place for a pond is, and actually develop some estimates of construction cost and that kind of thing.
Well, let's talk about constructing the pond. And if you've got a question, you can say hello. I think the phones working again yet, Rona? Are they back yet, or do we know? Well, you can try 888-808-8637. We've been having some technical difficulties there, but you can get us on the C Spire text line, and that's easy, 601-879-4395. Larry Bull's the Assistant Director of Fisheries. Larry, when's the best time of the year to construct the pond?
Well, I guess logically it makes sense to construct it in the drier months, summer and early fall. You want to build your pond with the goal of having it completed by early fall so that you can start collecting some water and then be able to stock fish in the fall. So that's kind of your goal, is to have it completed where you're able to. And you don't have to have a pond full before you stock fish, but maybe 40% of the pond needs to be full so that you can stock fish in November, early December.
Mm-hmm. And you can do that very easily. It's not hard for you to do here, and you can check it out. What's about the depth? What about the depth of the pond?
Well, we get a lot of questions about this. You typically want to make sure that you don't need a real deep pond, and maybe 10 to 12 feet at maximum is the maximum depth. On average, it should be 5 to 6 feet. Around the edges of the pond, you want, well, even anywhere in the pond, you don't want any shallower than 3 feet. So you want a minimum of 3 feet deep and no more than 10 to 12 feet deep.
Why, in any deeper, why not?
Well, if you get a deeper pond, you have the possibility of what we call the pond will stratify in the summer, where at deeper depths you'll have low oxygen water, and this potentially can contribute to a fish kill.
What is the best way to rid a pond of turtles so they won't eat up your fish you stocked in your new pond, besides an AR-15?
Well, you can build turtle traps, and we've got some plans for turtle traps. But typically, turtles aren't a big problem in a pond.
John in Boonville says, do you need a permit to enlarge a pond? I would probably think so.
You need to contact DEQ, yes.
Let's try Cliff in Social. Cliff, what's up, buddy?
Hey, this is Cliff. I appreciate your call. I have a pond that's older, and I'm disabled, and we used to get fish from the fish hatchery in Lyman near Gulfport, and I heard we can't get them there anymore, and I was trying to find a place, maybe being disabled, I could get some fish.
Sir, you're right. We don't offer fish to the public anymore. I think that was a program that was in place 20 to 25 years ago. We do have a list of private fish hatcheries that I'd be happy to send you, or we have it on our website. If you call our main office, we can get a list of fish hatcheries to you.
Okay, I appreciate that.
All right, Cliff, thank you, man. Appreciate you calling. Thank you for doing that with us. Let's see. So what are some of the really essential features that you really should include during the construction of a pond? Obviously, you're going to want some cover in there if you can get it, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. This includes certain aspects of the dam. When you build a dam, you want to have a 3-to-1 slope on the inside of the dam. In other words, the water side of the dam. And on the back side, you want it a 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 slope. And the reason for that is so that you can keep it mowed. You don't want to allow trees or any kind of woody brush to grow up on the dam. You want to I always encourage folks to have a drain pipe, have a way to drain the pond down. You never know when you might need to fix a fishing pier, or there are some management techniques that include a drawdown where you can draw the water down.
A lot of times people do that in the wintertime if they get too many shad in there, won't they?
That, or if we have a situation where there's too many brim and not enough bass, and we'll tell them to draw it down and kind of gets the brim out of the brush and allows the bass to eat those brim. Makes it easier on them to catch them. You also want to have an emergency spillway as part of your dam, and that's just a low area on the dam where if we do get heavy rains, it allows the pond to drain out faster.
It gives it a kind of an escape route there if it really gets bad, and Lord knows we've seen that kind of rain. It looks like that kind of rain's coming toward the end of the week, too.
Right, that's exactly right. And you want to make sure you have about most ponds are filled and kept full by rainwater, by runoff, and you want to have a watershed. We recommend about 10 acres of watershed for every 1 acre of pond. So all that comes into play when you're planning the pond as well. And also during the construction phase is a great time to build fishing piers, put out the fish attractors that you talked about, gravel spawning beds, and also maybe even a boat ramp if you want to have a boat ramp this is the time to do that.
We're here with Larry Bull. He's the Assistant Director of the Fisheries Bureau here. We're talking about ponds and how you need to do that, what you need to do to make them the best that they can be. And we're doing that with us today. When I come back, I want to talk about what kind of fish we're going to put in there. What species should we stock, those types of things. And we'll do that as we continue with Mississippi Outdoors Radio, as always brought to you by the Foundation for Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. I said, this is Wes. I got a small pond 6 feet deep in the middle. It's got algae all around. What can I do to clean it out?
Well, if you're confident that it's algae, then there's some products that, for example, something called Q-Trine Plus, that will kill that. But I would suggest that you get it positively identified by one of our biologists, or you can actually take a plant sample to your county extension agent office and have them look at it. Let's verify that that's really what you have, because it's important before we can really be confident that we're giving you the right recommendations.
Let's get into fish stocking now. What kind of fish should be stocked? What fish species should we stock in these ponds, you think?
Okay, well, typically if you've got a pond that's larger than 1 acre in size, and that's the minimum size that we would suggest for stocking largemouth bass and bluegill. You can start with that combination right there and have a great fishing pond. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can add red ear sunfish, which is another brim species, and some people like to have channel catfish in their pond. Personally, I wouldn't recommend channel catfish unless you just really love channel catfish, and the reason being is that if you ever decide to feed your brim or feed your catfish with a floating food, then those catfish tend to really eat a lot of the food, and your brim may not get as much as you want them to.
Right.
Plus, catfish over time some of them will get pretty large, and obviously, anytime you can only have so many pounds of fish in a pond. So personally, I tell folks, unless you really like channel catfish, don't put channel catfish in there. And then we also recommend that you put a few grass carp in a pond. This is kind of a maintenance type of thing, or preventive maintenance type of stocking to reduce the chances of getting aquatic plants.
So, and obviously, you when you put the carp in there, how do you keep those guys from reproducing?
Well, those grass carp are river. They have to have a river system to reproduce in, so they won't reproduce in your pond.
Okay, good deal.
Yep.
Good deal. Let's go to the phones. Jim is on the road. Jim, you got a question about pond management. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. If you have an existing pond, what size gravel do you put in there for your brim to bed, and how much gravel would be, needed like in one spot? And I'm going to hang up and try to listen, okay?
You want to use a pea gravel, a smaller gravel size. I would recommend the minimum size of your brim bed to be about 100 square feet, and I would make that gravel 4 to 6 inches thick on the bottom. Use some kind of border, maybe some PVC pipe or wood timbers if you can, to try to form a border around that brim bed, and that way, over time, it won't get spread out as quickly.
I tell you what works really good, if you can get one of these plastic pallets. They work excellent. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they work excellent. You literally just sink them and fill them as you go, and they're pretty good. They're kind of hard to find, but they do work very well. All right, so how many fish should you stock in a pond?
Well, we recommend when you stock your brim, you put 500 per acre. If you do bluegill by themselves, that's going to be 500 bluegill. If you do a combination of bluegill and red ear sunfish, 350 bluegill and 150 red ear sunfish per acre. And those need to be stocked in the fall.
What about bass?
Bass, 50 per acre, and those are stocked in the spring.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's to my next question. That kind of answers it there, doesn't it?
It does, and I want to stress that it's some of the common problems that we see are in a pond are related to when those fish are stocked. So I can't stress enough how important it is to stock the fish at the correct time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to ask
Sure.
the question. Why does that make the difference, Larry? What?
Well, the idea is you get your brim in early in the fall, and you're stocking fingerling fish, so we're talking 1 to 2 inch fish, and then throughout the early spring, they're going to put on some size. They're going to get large enough to spawn, so that when you stock your largemouth bass, which you're stocking at fingerling size also, 2 to 3 inch fish, the reproduction from the bluegill, the small bluegill fry and et cetera, are going to provide food for those bass. And that allows the bass to grow large enough to survive the first winter. So that's the whole idea behind the stocking
figured
sequence.
out. Larry.
It's like a two-stage process.
It is, and if you stock the grass carp and channel catfish, those other species I talked about, you also stock those in the fall with your brim.
But you hadn't mentioned crappie.
Well, I was not going to get to crappie, but what I was going to ask is what species of fish should you not stock?
That's a good.
Crappie is one of those number one fish that we recommend folks don't put in a pond.
Why is that?
Well, they can overpopulate. They can be pretty prolific spawners and overpopulate a pond. We also don't recommend other species of catfish. I've seen people that have put a few flathead catfish in their pond. Flatheads are very predatory fish, and they'll eat. We went to a 1 acre pond in Madison where the guy had put a couple flathead catfish, and we couldn't find hardly any other fish in that pond. Those
ate them all.
They sure do. They sure will.
Mm-hmm.
So, but typically, and some people like to put shad, and that's kind of a personal thing, but we definitely don't recommend crappie and don't recommend the other catfish species.
Well, even for somebody that wanted to have a crappie pond, I mean, if that was all they put in there?
Oh, that'd be you've got to. They would overpopulate, and you'd end up with a pond full of 3 or 4 inch crappie.
Really?
Yes.
So is there any? I mean, we're just hammering the crappie question, aren't we?
Yeah.
But like, what would be a good size pond that would sustain a?
Well, typically we don't recommend it for ponds smaller than 50 acres.
I got you.
But there's always exceptions to the rule. You can sometimes if you on a new pond, I definitely would not put crappie. But I've seen some situations where you've got a lot of bass in a pond and someone's introduced crappie later on, after the pond's been well established and there's an overpopulation of bass. Typically the bass can control those crappie. Black crappie's a little bit less prolific than the white crappie, and some people are successful, but when you do that, you limit yourself to keeping your bass overpopulated. So if I don't recommend it.
Right. I know a friend of mine's got a lake, and they didn't put crappie in there, but they got them now.
Yes.
They don't know how.
Well, that happens
They just
a
fall
lot.
out of the sky.
A lot of people think it's birds. I don't really think that's true, but
Is it around like a area that can be flooded?
Not really. No.
This is mysterious, JT.
somebody brought them in, maybe.
That's what we're figuring is somebody thought it would be a good idea to put some crappie in there. But I don't know. Mike said, how do you handle otters? You don't. You get somebody to get them. That's what about the only thing you can do. Those are some bad little boogers, aren't they?
Right, yes. And they can cause damage to your dam as well as eat fish. So you can get those, hire folks that trap them.
Yeah, those are some bad little boogers, man. Mike says, great show today, guys. Working on a pond for a friend right now. All right, well, thank you. We were glad to do it for you today. And need to do that. Now, what about if somebody's got an existing pond? They need some help with it. Y'all can help them too, right?
Oh, yes, we sure do. I don't claim to be much of an engineer, and that's why I don't like to get involved too much in designing the dam and that kind of thing. But when it comes to the biology, once you get the pond built and you're ready to stock fish, we can help you all the way through from there. Our biologists that work in the field, may come out to your pond. They will definitely talk to you. We offer help, yes.
All right. Well, there you go. And great information, Larry. I appreciate you being here with us today.
Oh, thank you, JT.